Welcome to Season 3 of The Lifestyle Chase, and I'm your host, Chris Little. This podcast features high performers who have found a way to live their best life while balancing their health, wellness, friends, and family. To help this podcast grow, please share it on social media, rate 5 stars, tell your friends, and check out the past 140 episodes and counting. You can follow me on Instagram at Christian Little and at The Lifestyle Chase. Thanks for listening. Let's get started. If you are a fan of hitting your protein target and you eat meat, this is great. To give you a bit of backstory on True Local, they appeared on the Dragon's Den about 2 years ago. No matter where you are based, that meat is sourced from your local area. Have a look at their website and see if they service you. If you use True Lifestyle Chase with your purchase, you can get 3 pounds of grass-fed and finished ground beef in your first 2 orders of a regular box, or 1 pound of grass-fed and finished ground beef in your first 2 orders of a small box. Alternatively, if you like bacon, if you order from True Local and use the code APLittleBacon, you can get 1 pound of delicious bacon in all regular box orders, as well as 4 boneless, skinless chicken breasts in the first 3 regular box orders. If you are more of a small box person, you can still get a pound of bacon on your first 3 orders. And that's the codes True Lifestyle Chase or AP Little Bacon. Your options are ground beef or bacon and chicken. Make your choice. I hope you enjoy. Thanks for listening to or watching The Lifestyle Chase. So, welcome to episode 161 of The Lifestyle Chase. I am joined by Dr. Michelle Boland. How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic, Chris. Thanks for letting me on. And wow, that's a serious amount of episodes you got going on.
Well, I mean, it's kind of funny because, like, I was telling you how I'm friends with Dean, and I started listening to his podcast when he was doing back when it was the Fitness Devil, and I listened from episode 1, and like I'm catching up to him, like slowly but surely. I will out podcast him.
That is amazing.
So, with your day to day, like just to give my audience a bit of a flow to your day to day, like what did you have going on? Like, what time did you start? Like, what's your life like these days?
Great question. So what's my life like these days? So I have like kind of my hands in a few different things. So I'm pretty careful on how I structure my weeks. I kind of just take 1 week at a time. Right now, what I do is Monday, I really reserve for like big long-term project day. So I spend, a few hours that day prioritizing, hey, what do I want to accomplish a year from now, 2 years from now? Let's work towards that. Tuesday and Thursday are my big in-person training days. So I see a lot of people at the gym. And right now, I work for myself, and I rent space from a local CrossFit facility, which is absolutely amazing, like a street away. So I'm very thankful for that. And so I basically had clients all morning this morning, and then I'll go back tonight and have clients at night. And usually I'm pretty good with like getting things done, but today specifically I had to wake up at like 5:15 to finish a program that I kept putting off that was like due, and to like prep for a call that I had today. So unfortunately it was a little earlier than I like to get up, but that happened today. And then Wednesdays and Fridays right now, because of COVID, is where I really try to reserve a lot of my virtual sessions and my remote coaching program writing. So those are my 2 days focus on that. And then Friday, I have those 2 things. And then that's where I do like my short-term tasks. So, respond to emails, and, I have like a to-do list of like quick things that I need to do, like email this person that, post this kind of thing. That's how I kind of schedule my weeks now.
Well, I mean, it's very relatable. It's important to have some structure. With everything that happened in the last like 12 months, I know everybody has like a different story to it. It's a reoccurring thing, but with that, there's a lot of things that people can take from it. Like sometimes it's like a cool lesson. What kind of pivots did you have to make in 2020?
That's such a great question. And honestly, I think it's just so important. I think it exposed a lot of people's sources of income. And for me, majority of my income was from in-person sessions, but I did have, a little hand in, online stuff, remote coaching. But really during 2012 is where I created like a huge push to really improve and increase my remote training services and my online business. So that's where I tried to make that pivot. And then also I learned a lot of lessons in terms of kind of what I just talked about of like grouping days together and being a little bit more organized, because really my goal with working for myself is to be able to create a career around the lifestyle that I want. And so, soon I'm going to have to move a little bit further from the gym. So if I can reduce my travel to home from the gym as much as possible, that's what I want to do. AKA, I don't want to be driving into the gym 6 days a week. I want to probably do it maybe 3 days a week. So really pushing services that I can do from home, and then also grouping together like my in-person sessions. So that's kind of how I've tried to view this year as a huge positive.
Definitely. I mean, like, I've had some conversations with people, and like they talk about how the greatest growth comes from like extreme discomfort, like just like feeling like you're not ready for that next step, or kind of feeling like you don't have the resources that you might need. I make allusions to like the time machine and tell people to go back in the time machine. So I'm going to do that to you. If we took the time machine into like the period of time that was like the first 2 years of your career in the fitness industry, what was your life like then? Like, what can you recount? What stands out to you about that period of time?
Oh man. Being super overwhelmed. So I would say, I trained people when I was in grad school, but my first full-time job, I didn't really have too much responsibility when I was, in grad school in terms of training people. But when I got thrown into a Division I collegiate program kind of environment with, I was working at that time with a top 5 nationally ranked hockey team. There's a lot of expectations involved in that. And I think I wasn't confident in my skills in terms of this is what I'm going to do with them. This is why. It was kind of like I was looking around, and luckily I had great people around me for this to be like, okay, what do I do? Like, how do I actually take all the things that I've learned and build something that's going to be helpful towards them? It's kind of like that paralysis by analysis thing of like, I have all this stuff, but no one's kind of really helped me put it together and apply it within specific contexts, right? So, I had, and a lot of it too was being in front of a group. That was the scariest part as well, because, I went from maybe one-on-one sessions, maybe presenting in a class, which is a little bit different because you have kind of a lot of prep time. And then maybe like small group where there's a group of 3 or 4 people you were training to, 25 people who are very confident in their abilities and looking to you for confidence as well. So, being in front of a group of athletes, is always very nerve-wracking. But over time, those two things, improve, and, your confidence and competency goes up immensely.
So with that being said, if you had someone, like if you had the equivalent of you just at that period of time, like your younger self, and they were sitting across from you and they were saying that they didn't feel confident or that they felt nervous, like what kind of advice would you give them? What kind of a pep talk would you give them to kind of light a fire under their ass?
Yeah, you literally said like the line before. It's like you only ever learn in like uncertainty and like uncomfortable situations, right? So it's like it's kind of like embrace those emotions a little bit better and know that they're natural and it's okay. And you're never going to be comfortable in anything you do. And if you are, you're not pushing yourself very much. So it's like look at it as like a learning opportunity. And like if you get your butt kicked a little bit, like it's okay. And the way I look at things now is, I never want to promote, totally being okay with failure in terms of like entering into an experience that way. It's almost like I really want to focus on the response from that experience. So, younger self going in, I don't want to have the attitude of me failing is okay. But if something does happen where I probably could have done something a little bit better, I should have the skills to say, hey, what did I learn from this? It's okay that I failed. And now, okay, it's over. Those emotions go towards, okay, how do I improve from this?
Well, I mean, it's good timing for that because, like, I was telling you about how I have the green screen set up behind me and, like, how the post-production would look a little different. And it's, like, as a podcast host, that was me taking a lesson. That was me realizing, well, like, if I'm passionate about anything that I do, like, should I put everything that I have into it? Or should I just, like, wonder why I'm not standing out or wonder why it's not working? And so it's just, like, I was seeing lessons in my own failures, and so I like that you brought that up. When you were kind of starting off in those first couple of years, who were the kind of people that you looked up to? Like, who did you look to for leadership or inspiration?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know how these kind of things like kind of fell on my lap a little bit, but there's two kind of people who really affected me. And a lot of this was I was at grad school at Springfield College, which is in like Western Massachusetts. And I kind of like wasn't really conscious about this at the time, but after the fact, looking back, I realized, whoa, like the president of the college was female. The dean of the program was female. The chair of the program was female. And my graduate student, advisor who I was working for was also female. And so I had these very strong leadership position females surrounded by me. And it's funny because the chair of the program, the dean, at every point in my graduate experience, I worked for one of those individuals. So I kind of got to know them. They taught me a lot of things. And then I also was the personal trainer when I was in grad school to the president of the university. So I got to know her on a very deep level. And that probably had the biggest impact on me. Probably not at the moment because you don't realize those things, but where I am now for sure. And that just blows me away because that is extremely rare. The other aspect, yeah. Go ahead. The other aspect of that, is I don't know how this happened, but I was in grad school when Dr. Pat Davison, who we're kind of both familiar with, was a professor at that school. And he'll tell you the story of, he probably didn't think, anything of me during that time, or didn't really think I'd probably be, where I am today in terms of really having a passion for the fitness industry and public speaking and things like that. But his approach to teaching really lit a fire of like, wow, this is what strength and conditioning is all about. Because when I was in the master's degree program, I actually questioned my career choice in strength and conditioning. I really actually fell out of love with it and didn't really want to pursue it. And then I met him and he kind of gave me a different perspective of, oh, this isn't all that strength and conditioning is, and taught me so much that really probably embedded me choosing strength and conditioning and pursuing that career over being a college professor. So those two things are just crazy. He'll tell you the story of probably my biggest learning moment was I was defending my master's thesis. And, I did fine. I passed. And then we all know Pat Davison, where people don't realize how nice and sweet he is. He can be purposely aggressive in some aspects. But, he approached me after and he's like, hey, can you stick around a little bit? And he's like, I know you're going into the doctorate program. I really just would expect a little bit more from you. He's like, you did fine, you did the standard, but he was like, you're going to really need to push yourself if you think you're going to move on. And to me, I was like, wow, like he's totally right. And then I put way more effort and passion into, my graduate years after that. That kind of was a huge kick in the butt for me. So I'm pretty thankful for that.
Well, that's really cool, and we're definitely going to circle back to that because I'm a big Dr. Pat Davidson fan. With that being said, like when you're meeting people in your career in life, like what are the core values that you find you resonate with when you're kind of coming across people? What are the things that stand out that kind of like are almost always there when you're picking your role models or your colleagues or just people that you give your time to?
Wow, that's a great question. Probably being an overall good person, someone who really exudes positive energy and doesn't make you feel bad for the things that you don't know, right? And the people who can talk on the level of understanding of their listeners. Because I think there's a lot of people out there who just basically like to spew out everything that they know, and they don't care whatsoever if you understand it. You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, here's all the stuff I know. And like, if you don't get it, like, whatever. So people who can really take these complex things, make them simple, and talk really on the understanding of their listener as a way to communicate and create common language between people. I think those are the two most important things that you can have in an educator or mentor.
Well, I mean, that's a really good point. I mean, that's something that I've really valued because it's so nice as a fitness professional that just wants to learn, to have people that want me to learn, like for me to find the right people that are willing to, like, they can be extremely educated, really smart, really experienced, but they're willing to elevate others in their midst. And all it takes is that willingness or desire to improve at whatever pace it may be. You talked about how Pat Davidson can be a little bit abrasive, but I've noticed he makes those posts, it gets a whole bunch of attention, and like half the people that comment on it truly understand what he's saying. Like, some people are getting like valuable career lessons, and other people are just thinking that he's out to hurt people's feelings, but he's truly not. Like, that's something that I see. With that being said, like, what are some of the lessons aside from what we've already discussed that he's kind of imparted on you that were like, holy cow, like I didn't see that until I really thought about it?
Oh yeah, there's so many things in that. So yeah, going back to, he's very intentional with his words. And that's a huge lesson because, a lot of the problem between trainers or peers is just the miscommunication or maybe not defining the words that you are talking about. And you'll find a lot of commonalities between other people than you will differences. And what he does a really good job at is how intentional he is with the words that he chooses. And it's hard on social media because there's not a lot of context involved. So I think people don't really understand that as well. Some of the biggest lessons with him is probably changing the lens towards tradition. And when I say that, I mean, strength and conditioning really has its foundation and deep claws in what created it. We're kind of like jumble mix of sports that involved lifting weights in terms of, bodybuilding came about, powerlifting came about, and Olympic weightlifting. And strength and conditioning is like, oh, these tactics are really good for getting stronger and building muscle, and speed development and power development. Let's just throw them all together, and that's kind of how we'll train. Well, it's like Pat and several other people have kind of allowed me to be like, okay, don't jump on the bandwagon and just ride the train without just, looking out the window and seeing like where you're going, kind of a thing. That was an analogy right on the spot right there. And it's like, okay, take a step back from the people that you're working with, of like Susie, who 50-year-old mother, like, what are the actual benefits of training like a power lifter or training like an Olympic weightlifter? If I have a soccer player, Rachel, who's going into her freshman year, why am I doing powerlifting based activities or lifts in Olympic weightlifting? What do I want to get them better at? What is the outcome that I want? Maybe Rachel, soccer player, wants to get better at changing direction. Maybe Susie, the mom, wants to get like back hurts every time she stands up. Or, she doesn't do well when she has to sit down or something like that. I want to take pain out of the equation in some aspects. And it's saying, okay, well, now exercise selection comes from, how do we get better at these abilities within the skills that they want to get better at, and not just doing things to lift more weight, right? And taking immense amount of time to learn skills such as Olympic weightlifting without an actual specific outcome that you're trying to get. So it's kind of like taking a step back and really working backwards from something, instead of just kind of jumping on the bandwagon of, oh, I need to do this. I need to back squat this individual. I need to like hang clean these athletes, kind of a thing.
That's an important point. Like, I'm glad you outlined that. Like, it's often implied. I think a lot of people talk about it, but very few people really just like bring it down to like context matters. Just like what that person needs in their actual life makes a big difference. So I want to kind of bring the focus back to you. We've showcased some of your mentors, but you are, and I will tell you this with absolute confidence, a role model for both males and females in the industry. I like to pump people's tires on this podcast. But to be quite honest, it's just like if somebody follows you, they will see all kinds of different people trying out some of the things that you put into the fitness space and integrating them into how they're helping people. One of the first topics that I kind of want to talk about is your exercise library that you had released. I think it was in the last year or so. I just remember seeing it pop up quite often. I just kind of want to hear the story about that. Like, when did that first start? When did you start first putting the work into it? Like, what was it like?
Oh, man. Yeah. So I can't remember the specific origins of it, but when I get like my mindset on something, it's like nothing else matters. And I was working at a D1 program in Boston, and I just kind of realized that someone was talking about a specific exercise, but didn't have the visual representation for it. Or I was writing programs for people on the side, and I would write, like staggered stance med ball slam, and then like the person would come back at me and be like, what are you talking about? Like, I have no idea what this exercise is. And then I would try to look and find one on YouTube, and like nothing, right? So it's like, okay, I found like a gap in kind of a tool that would be very useful for a lot of trainers. And so I just went nuts, and I videotaped like every exercise that I could possibly think of, every single variation, organized it, uploaded all the videos onto YouTube and unlisted them so you can't really search for them. And then, I just created this huge document that had like a video for any and every exercise that you want. And it still continues to grow today because, I released one past summer, and, I still do it. Every exercise variation that I think of, I just tape a quick video of it. Boom, I have like kind of a good system now. And I think I have like 200 more videos already, which I'll like, pump out soon. But I've heard a lot of great feedback from it, especially in 2020, where like you need to communicate an exercise. And then I have a lot of coaching videos as well of like actually taking people through an exercise technique. But, remotely, it's very difficult, especially if you're behind a computer screen and I don't have the room to be able to show someone like a deadlift. of, hey, watch this YouTube video, and send like them a link and insert links in programs. And it's just, it's crazy on how much it kind of grew and expanded over time.
Well, it's definitely cool to talk about because, I mean, I have to say it definitely inspired me to take some initiative in my own online training. I was like, well, if I just film every exercise that I do, after about a month, I'll probably have quite a few. And that's kind of the outcome. And it was just to see like a lot of male trainers that I look up to were sharing it as a resource. And it was just like, it was a game changer for people who didn't have the time or the energy during a very stressful time to be able to have access to something that was communicated very clearly. Like just like for people who have a similar mindset to training as you do, it would be quite easy for them to communicate how you were demonstrating the exercise to their clients, which is extremely valuable. Like it goes way further than any of the YouTube videos that we'll find, because like what I've learned in my career so far is just like subtle movements, little simple cues make a huge difference, or just a different way of explaining something can be that light bulb moment that is like the game changer to retaining a client or having that result. To kind of like close off my tangent a little bit here, in your career, has there ever been a time where you were just like ready to throw your arms up in the air and quit? Like, have you ever felt like you were just ready to give up?
I'll think about that. I want to go to like a point of like the database of like, a cue that just like is a huge point for someone, because that is just a phenomenal comment too. And I think the database as well of like, it allows you that ability, because, I'll have a video of like a staggered stance RDL. But if I was so detailed in the video and said like, oh, find the outside of your foot and shift this way and that way, that's not going to apply to all the clients that you work with, right? So like you have this like general video that now you can apply your unique like personalized cues to. Like, hey, see this video, this is what it's gonna look like. But now I want you to find like the inside of your foot and your back heel, right? And feel heavy on those two things. So that was a great point too. Anytime I just wanted to throw my hands up, I think that, in the collegiate setting, my transition from the collegiate setting to like the private setting was a huge like eye opener for me, and something that I had to change a lot of my coaching when I transitioned. So there's unique things. So in the collegiate setting, I think it's a lot of coaches, sport coaches, that just don't understand your value or don't really care about your value. So, and they also have perceived expectations about like what you're going to be doing. So why aren't you hang cleaning? Like that's how you develop power. I don't understand. Like, why aren't we heavy back squatting? And we want to get these people stronger. And literally getting you basically in trouble or creating, scenes of like, we're forcing you to have to do those things. So that's difficult to be able to kind of say, hey, I'm the expert in here. I'll communicate the value of like what I'm doing, but I also making sure that you're in an environment that has autonomy, right? Of like, I don't believe those things are going to create value or better outcomes for your athletes. So obviously that has its challenges, but overall, like the collegiate environment was super fun, because there's nothing better than being in a weight room with like 18 to 22-year-olds who just like want to get after it and enjoy it. And it's just a fun environment. In the private setting, a lot of stuff that makes you want to throw your hands up in the air is, of course, like dealing with like owners and bosses, someone who oversees you that may not have the same vision as you do, or wants services a different way than you do. Or, in the private sector, you have to do a lot of either the company works to bring you clients, or you have to go out and get clients, and marketing yourself and getting clients to come in and perceive your value appropriately. that's something that's extremely challenging. That it's just like sometimes you do have those days of like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this, or I have a different view of from the person I'm working with. And that's kind of like why really working, there's nothing really better than working for yourself, right? Because you kind of remove all those types of headaches. But yeah, those are kind of some like struggles in each context.
Well, it's important that you kind of outline some of that, and I really like the part where you talk about like expressing your value. I know that that's tough for just about anybody. Like trainers, like I've had conversations with trainers like at the gym where seeing each other in passing with all this COVID stuff, you're not able to visit too much. But it's just I have really realized just how hard people are on themselves. Like when it doesn't matter where a person is at in their career. They could be 3 years in, they could be 10 years in, they could be 15 years in, and they've got some demons, and they're often going to second guess their product, or somebody could question them, and they could be convinced and question themselves. What has your experience been with that? Like, do you ever have really strong moments of self-doubt? What are the things that you have to do to be able to like express your value consistently through the ebbs and flows of life?
No, that's very well said. I would say, being very convicted in what you think your value is, because yes, I can be here on like a point of privilege, and I would never tell you to turn down business based on like a money issue. But if people give me kind of like a hard time of what I charge, it's kind of just like, well, this is what I charge, and that's kind of it. And like I'll explain to you what I do and kind of maybe why I'm different from people who charge a little bit less. And you can choose to work with me, and I'll try to help you and support you the best I can. And this is kind of how things are. Never get overly emotional about things. Don't take things personally. Oftentimes it's not you that the person may be, questioning things from. Maybe it's like past experiences or their expectations. Yeah, that's kind of like my 2 cents about making sure that you understand your value and kind of are very prideful in what you do, and don't allow other people to kind of change that.
Well, I think it's important that you showcased it in that way. Like something that happened, I think, for probably a lot of people is just like when you have to tolerate a certain degree of like just basically with what happened in 2020, like so many people had to shift from like not having access to their gyms, maybe not having access to like the social relationships that they had, being able to see their friends, and then like the tolerance for just like things that take too much energy was like dialed in. Like we no longer tolerated worrying about things that didn't matter. Like certainly getting busy with clients, that matters, but worrying about if someone has a confusing excuse for not working with someone doesn't matter. Like it's kind of like you kind of alluded to like this is my service, this is my rate, take it or leave it. If you want to walk away, this is what I do. And that's something that I was thinking about the other day. I was just like obviously I could be more busy. Everybody could be more busy, relatively speaking. But I mean, like if anyone truly has that confidence in themselves to be like, this is what it is. And like, I'm not perfect. I'm always open to learning, but I am consistently learning and I'm consistently communicating. I will find a way to get you from point A to point B, but it comes at a rate and I'm not going to negotiate on it. And if you don't want to pay it, see you later. Like, I think this was definitely a year where people who didn't feel that as strongly probably feel it a bit more strongly. And hopefully if someone's not feeling it, they have a reason to now. Because if somebody truly wants to be in this industry, they have to have that. Like if they don't have that, it's going to be really, really tough. You were saying something, so I'll let you take over.
No, I mean, that's just perfect. Like people are outsourcing to you for a specific reason, right? And I think they'll respect you being kind of like stern with thing, and oftentimes I've noticed that those people will always come back, and they'll choose you. And I don't blame people for reducing rates and prices this past year. I think a lot of people were, in tough spots, but at the end of the day, people are paying you for your expertise and time. So there should be no price difference between like your in-person time and then your like Zoom and programming writing time. So don't like reduce your value because of, the changes in circumstances. And
Yeah.
I think the other thing too, I'm pretty conscious of, which I think is, every field has their kind of vices a little bit. And I think, money for volume is kind of a big problem in our industry of like, I have to train more people, more hours to make more money. If that makes sense. So like typically trainers, people always like try to make it like, oh, you're tough, like you're hard, like you got to put in your time and your work 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Every single day in, day out. You have to work on the weekends. And yeah, and of course, like some cases that is true. And honestly, that's probably a huge educational experience because you're going to be exposed to so many people, but it's actually really hard probably to learn from those experiences if like you're just dead and like pounding like your eighth coffee of the day. You're probably not taking a lot of information in. So I think also taking a step back, and we have the privilege of doing it this day and age with all the technology available to us and kind of this entrepreneurship aspect of careers we have these days of thinking about like how you want your career to fit your lifestyle and not your lifestyle to fit your career, and being kind of in that realm.
Well, that's important. And I mean, something that I thought about as you were kind of like explaining your point was just the value in like, if we are surrounded by people who can see these qualities that we have that might make our lifestyle better. Like, I mean, almost every episode for the past like 3 months, I've given Kyle Dobbs at Compound Performance a shout out. So I got to keep with the trend.
Nice. Love it.
Something about like the mentorship that I did taught me to see like, I'm already doing stuff that's valuable that I wasn't like putting value on. And so rather than kind of like you said, increasing volume, like increasing the amount of hours working with clients, just like seeing the bigger picture, similar to exercise selection, like understanding like there are other services or other like ways in which we can do what we set out to do that also allow us to live our lives. Like I've seen people putting out like evergreen like programs to help with their push-ups, or there's people who offer help with social media. There's all kinds of like different ways to do it. There's like when people do like a paid seminar or a mentorship, like things that people would have never thought of doing before, where they were surrounded by the right people that kind of gave them that self-confidence to realize that like they had everything that they needed and they're already doing something right. And if they just take that chance, kind of like how we talked about like exercise libraries, just like recording those videos, start with 10, you'll have like 1,000 before you know it, kind of thing. But it's just like, I hope that everybody that listens to this show is surrounded by people like that. Because like you talked about Pat Davidson, and like I'm sure there's handfuls of more people. With that being said, let's give some shout outs to some female fitness professionals that have helped you in your career. Like who are some people that pop into your head, and tell me more about them.
Perfect. Definitely will say Kyle Dobbs is worth all those shout outs. So keep those up. I would say my undergrad strength and conditioning coach was a female. And I think that was, again, it's like I look back and I just randomly had all these females in leadership positions. And it's crazy how I had that, because, again, it's pretty rare. I did an internship at Northeastern University in Boston, Massachusetts in my master's program. And that's where I ended up having my first full-time job. But when I was interning there, they had a coach there named Sarah Cahill. and she came from kind of like Mike Boyle's system in like USA hockey. And so seeing her in that role was extremely important. And she kind of had, extreme confidence in front of people, but then also like shared like humility and vulnerability at the same time, right? Because I think a lot of like masculine aspects of the fitness industry that I see, like I don't really connect to that much. So I think with her, and then also the people who I ended up working with at Northeastern were very humble and showed a lot of vulnerability in their position, and I think I connected a lot to that. Let's see, other people. So I think those were kind of like probably the main two individuals in terms of like the fitness industry that I kind of like look up to.
Well, you made some really good points with just like what you connected to and like what you saw in people, because a while back I had a conversation with a female fitness professional based out of Calgary, and I was like, who do you look up to? And she listed a couple of dudes, and it was like nothing wrong with that, but like wouldn't she be able to have a greater connection with somebody who sees life differently? Like it's just I'm a strong believer in like surrounding myself with diversity in all senses of the word, because I'm going to miss out if there's a huge bias. Like if I'm just like learning from a bunch of bald bearded dudes, it's going to be very narrow. I'm not going to learn nearly as much. And I'm not going to become as good as I could be. I'm not going to have as much like empowerment to live life on my terms. So with that being said,
you're gonna be talking about how good you guys look in your beards all day,
that's all it would be. Like, I mean, I had a podcast interview with Jordan Syatt, and we could make bald guy jokes, and it like, I mean, we could go on all day, but then it's like, well, let's talk about something else, and we're not going to have that like scope to talk about things that so many other people with other experiences would be able to talk about.
I think it's a huge life skill that you have to have that will create so many advantages to be able to meet people and discern qualities from them. Both in the positive, like what I don't really like about this person, and then in the negative, don't really like about this person, positive, what I like about this person, be like, okay, how can I use these things to create the person who I want to be, and how I interact with people and do my job and train people with. And I think you just get way better outcomes instead of, just going blindly through your experiences with people.
Well, I mean, that's so true. Like, no matter whether we like it or not, like everybody that we meet, whether they're like our biggest fan or they've given us a hard time, like they all have a lesson to teach us. And like, some of those lessons we're going to have to be pretty humble in learning them, but if we don't learn them, then it's going to make life a lot more difficult. And so I'm glad we kind of like bantered on that piece right there, because it's just like, that's some clutch life advice for people. Like that's something that if they start to realize, okay, like I'm getting some pushback from this person, but what kind of a lesson can they teach me? Like how can they shape me to have an easier time to get to where I want to be? Or am I just going to walk away from that opportunity?
Yeah, 100%. And the seeing people change is also extremely important too, because like then you can know that you have the ability to do that. Because I've seen a lot of, arrogant people, over the course of a few years or, whatnot, from the last time I saw them to, the current when I interact with them, become extremely humble people. And it took them some sort of like learning expedition, maybe something negative happening in their life to create that. But change is possible, and not giving up on people too, just like writing people off,
That one's important. Like, I mean, it's effortless to be like, I don't want to have anything to do with that person. I'm just going to walk away. I'm not going to answer their messages. I'm just done. But you're going to experience a lot more growth when you find a way to get on the same level and lean into that tough conversation or figure out where you disagree. Like that's what I love about seeing some of like the Instagram lives that are coming out these days. It's like people are talking about a topic and they're discussing it, and they're not like doing personal attacks. They're just explaining their piece, they're explaining their side, and then everybody who is involved gets to have that much more understanding of like why you would take one stance over the other, or what truly was the explanation for why that one person, why was that the hill they wanted to die on, and why was it not for the other person. Sled push definitely pops into my head. I'm like, oh, like that one became a debate. But with that
and it's like both things work, right? Because the two people who are probably having those conversations like get really great outcomes, right? So it's like at the end of the day, it's like, what are you arguing about, you know?
It's so true. And like, it's like, are you going to walk away from this better, or are you just going to keep like yelling into your echo chamber and staying where you're at, kind of thing? If you were to give someone a piece of advice on how to live their life to the fullest in the most authentic way, what would that piece of advice be?
Wow, that is a fantastic question. I guess it's really going to be kind of hover over yourself and like watch yourself of like how you're behaving, how others are perceiving your behavior. You know, how someone probably could have taken what you said the wrong way. Could you have done the best in this situation? Being able to take a step back, reflect on your behavior, and then maybe how other people view your behavior, to me is living authentically, because I'm basically making sure that, you know, I am interacting with people the way I want to and developing relationships like the way I want to. And then I think the other part, maybe this is like a personal journey of, I think I was kind of like restricted in letting people in my life when I was kind of younger, and I was kind of like dead set on a path, and I didn't really expand into, you know, other people in terms of maybe like personal relationships and things. And I think since then, like I've allowed people to enter kind of my world a little bit and get to know people a little bit more and like depend on people a little bit more, especially in terms of like, you know, being in a serious relationship. I think that's something that's extremely helpful and, you know, helps me in all aspects of my life. And I think I embrace that a little bit more. And I feel like I've become the person I really want to be through those types of interactions or deeper interactions with people. You know, I think I'm very proud that I call my two best friends that I have every single week. So I talk to them on the phone every single week, not text message, right? Not like a few lines thrown back and forth, typed up each day, like actual interaction of seeing them in person or talking on the phone. And I think that is a huge point of something that I'm very proud of in my life and living authentically.
That was important that you kind of outlined some of those pieces, like just being okay with like opening up to having other people support you. Like nobody goes through life by themselves, no matter how strong they are or talented or intelligent. We all need friends. That's like the beauty of like these online mentorships. So many people were able to make friends on the internet in the past year. Yeah. And it's just like that stuff is a game changer. Like I could list off like 30 people that I consider my close friends who I've never met in person. And it's just like that connection that you can get and the level of support and just that reaffirmation of like, these are your strengths, use them, don't take them for granted kind of thing. Like, or this is what you thought was your A game wasn't actually your A game. Now show us your real A game. Like things like that are so important.
Yeah, and have people who give you honest feedback. Like having someone in my life that says to me, hey, you were like a real jerk in that situation. And me being able to say, yeah, like you're right. Yeah, that is accurate statement. People who are honest with you, not just like, I don't know, just being like, hey, no, you were totally fine. I totally agree with everything that you just had to say. Like, you don't want like everyone in your life to be like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely true. There's one more thing that I pose on people lately on the podcast, and it is you have to come up with a challenge for my audience, and it like you could literally be anything. Yeah, but think about something that you think would help them the most, just based on like your life experiences. And so essentially what I'll get you to do is be like your challenge for the day is, and then just say what it is, and then I'll just make sure everybody does it.
That's awesome. Accountability. I would say, what are ways in which you're investing in yourself? And that could be, it doesn't like, that's time, that's energy. Sometimes it can be financially. Investing in yourself in terms of chunking out time to do things that you are like enjoy. You like to paint. Are you investing time into doing that? Do you want to create like a meditation practice? Are you creating time in the morning to be able to do that? You want to learn more, XYZ. I think the biggest thing I see from people is this fear of investment, right? And it goes back to probably the fear of failure and being like, okay, am I throwing all of this away for something that I'm going to get a little kickback on? And I would say like really cut down those barriers and really start investing into yourself, whether it be education, whether it be like small like habit changes, or being okay with taking time for things that you enjoy and not just time for being productive. That makes sense.
That makes sense. It totally makes sense. I think that's something that people can actually like, it'll make their career a little bit better if they take a step back and like really think about that one and really think like, are they doing it or are they just saying that they're doing it?
Yeah, 100%. Again, it goes back to like how you want to live your life. I think when you invest in yourself, you make more steps towards how you want to live your life, of not just, hey, in 5 years, I want to own a house, in 3 years, I want to be married or something like that. It's like, those are just like kind of like checklists, like tasks to complete. It's actually, how do you want to behave in the world? What types of relationships do you want to have with people? And then how are you getting there? How do you know you're getting there? So I think like on a deeper level, making sure you really sit back and how do you define yourself? And the person that you want to be, and then how are you investing in that?
Absolutely. So if people want to track you down and learn more about you, what are the best ways to do that?
That's a great question. So my email address is mboland@michelleboland-training.com. Totally feel free to email me. I'm most active on Instagram, which is at dr.michelleboland. Send me a DM, whatever. Sadly, I'm probably on it pretty frequently. And then, I have my group classroom, which I do frequently. It's probably the same thing as what I would call like a mentorship, but it's basically like something that I've identified like in this point of my career of like, you asked me like looking back, like what could have helped me. And I think the academic system does a really shitty job at this, but it's like actually giving you learning skills and being like, okay, this is the information. The information is things like you're going to extract to turn into knowledge and then implement into the context that you are currently in. Well, it's like in, our current environment, it's like, there's just a shit ton of information and like schools of thought, like seminars, courses to go through, Instagram posts. And it's like, okay, what do I do with all of this information? How do I create kind of like a guardrail system that is pretty flexible to be able to actually perform our roles, which is get outcomes for the people that we're working with and create a clear path and plan towards that outcome. And my kind of course is basically like, okay, how do you create that process with all of your unique individual knowledge and experiences that you have. So it's not me directly like providing you those experiences and knowledge. It's showing you how to organize that to get like better results and like a clearer message towards your business. So if you want to like come really get to know me and interact with me on like a weekly basis, like definitely I encourage you to jump into that group as well.
That is awesome. So I'd like to thank you so much for joining me today. It's been really cool to like really talk about things and get to know your journey and learn from you. So thank you again.
No, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.